Hello, my name is Karl Lentini. I'm an independent filmmaker based here in Austin, Texas. I'm the co-writer and director of a movie called Men of Law, a little poster here. And the movie is about human trafficking. It's about a teenage girl who's kidnapped and then her family launches their own investigation and rescue operation. And so to help us learn about what it's like and how to help actual victims of trafficking, especially children, we have a gentleman here with us today, and I'm very pleased he's taken the time to talk to us. It's Matthew Kennedy, and he is a passionate advocate with over 15 years of experience in marketing and sales, deeply committed to ending child and human trafficking in California, across the US, and around the world. So thank you, Matthew, for being here.
Hey, Karl, thanks so much for having me, man. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to jumping on your podcast for a while now, so I'm glad we can make it work.
Yeah, and I appreciate your patience. I know schedules are crazy, and you're in California, I'm here, so made it happen.
That's right. We have a country to save, so we got to work together on these podcasts, try to get the information out to the people.
Right. Now, I admire the fact that you're a guy who's living your life, you have a job, but you take time out of your life and your schedule to devote to helping victims of human trafficking. So just tell us about that.
Yeah, I had my own personal great awakening, as they call it, when the pandemic first started of 2020 to 2021, when a lot of us were locked down. We all had more time in our day-to-day schedules to do things that were out of the ordinary, because it threw every person in the world through a loop, going through that period of history. And so, I kind of suspected that the world and our country was kind of going in the wrong trajectory, based off of just kind of like gut instinct. And now that I'm a born again Christian, I would call it like Holy Spirit, but there was something that was just kind of telling me that something wasn't right, and that I had to question everything and find the truth, because the world and the mainstream wasn't providing it to me. And what one of the biggest clues of that was going back further into 2016, whenever all of the mainstream news sources were trying to convince the public that Hillary Clinton was going to win the 2016 election in a landslide, and all the polls were showing that she was just going to, basically be a shoo-in candidate, and President Trump had no chance to be able to win that election. And I remember looking at that, like I was at the gym. I'll never forget. I was at the gym on a treadmill, and I was looking at all the TV screens, and they're all showing, mainstream news, and they're all flashing that up, the 2 days, 3 days, week before the election. And then I stayed up that night because I'm like, why are they saying this when every person that I've mentioned to that even pays attention to U.S. politics, or an Uber driver that I've occasionally ride in a car with, that maybe would bring up something about it, and I would ask them, kind of nonpartisan, like, what do you think you would, what decision do you think you're going to make? Do you feel like you're comfortable making a decision at the ballot box at this point? And we strike up conversation with that, and then I'll never forget staying up super late on the night of that election to see the election outcome. And right then and there, I knew that the mainstream networks, the big corporate networks, were not giving us correct reporting compared to what my own personal case studies were of just flat out asking people in passing, like, how do you think that the country is going to, react to this certain presidential outcome based on polls? And everyone's like, I don't believe it. And I started to question it. So then after that happened, and then under President Trump's first term, it really kind of got me looking into other sources for information. So that's when I discovered, well, back then you can find videos and information on YouTube before they started censoring it so bad. And then I discovered Rumble and Telegram and a few other sources to get my information. But it really wasn't until 2020 when I found really what was going on through information that people close to me would share, that trusted that I wasn't going to judge them by them showing me information. And I'll never forget this too, Karl. This kind of talks about how I really found out about the problem of trafficking and child trafficking was, I'm a contractor by trade, and I found myself in the living room of a homeowner's house, and they were talking about their home improvement projects, and we were talking about proposals and planning and all that stuff. And, we started like sharing some like-mind conversation. And then that led to the husband, who was a retired military man. And he was flat out just not holding back, just telling me exactly what he thought about the elite class of America and the world. And I didn't even really know what globalists were or the New World Order or anything like that. And I just remember this guy just had, he had no filter, and he was not holding back. And he was saying, Matt, all the people that you watch on your favorite movies, your, musicians, politicians, he's like 95% of them are more than likely involved in trafficking of humans. And then he had mentioned some other terminology. I don't know where you're going to put this video at, so I don't want to get it yanked down for certain words, but let's just say like one of the words kind of sounds like adrenaline and, a chrome bumper. So when I learned about what that was, I was like, that is the darkest thing I've ever learned about in my life. And then from that conversation, I had mentioned it to a buddy of mine that was like, I told him like how this conversation went. He's like, dude, you got to see this. You got to see this documentary. It's called Fall of the Cabal. And I'm like, what is that? He's like, let me just send it to you. Take about 2 days, go through them all and digest it. And let's talk again. Like, I think this is like a Wednesday. He's like, let's talk again on Saturday and let me know what your thoughts are. And at the time, it was a little bit more available for people to find. Since 2020, like it's really hard to find that video. I think you can find, it's a series of videos, right? And it's designed to kind of enlighten and prepare the public for all of the different layers of the global elite class and politicians and how they've been manipulating us and using 5G warfare, which is like information warfare, to use propaganda against its own people. And then it goes down, the rabbit trail into, the children and what they've been doing with children, to, what they've been sneaking into our food supply and, all the different things. But it does it in incremental crumbs to where somebody can literally digest it in little parts and go out and do their own research and verify some of the allegations that they're making in this documentary series. Now, mind you, the woman who created it was from, I want to say like Denmark or somewhere in Europe. But since I think, was it maybe a year ago, she had turned up suicided, you can say. She's no longer with us. And so the powers to be could have allegedly been involved in her no longer being with us. But because this video went mega viral and it woke up a ton of people during 2020 through 2024, 25. And so that really woke me up to the magnitude and the darkness that has been around our country and the world for actually hundreds, if not thousands of years, but it's been amplified in the last, 20, 30 years here in our country in America. And child trafficking has just been one of the largest dark money sources of income to fund the dark money markets of the world and the global elite population and their operations. You could even tie that into the CIA and some other things that information has come up about. And so for me, it's just been like a God thing where he initially put me with a woman with a church that I go to who ran for U.S. Senate here in California against Adam Schiff in the 2024 election. He's getting a lot of he's getting a lot of flack right now. The media is reporting on him and some mortgage fraud case, so he's in a bunch of trouble. But he right now is our sitting U.S. senator for California, and she ran against him in that primary race, and that was really where I got my feet wet in doing public relations and campaign management, which led me to build a stronger relationship with our church pastor, Pastor Dave Bryan of Church of Glad Tidings. And he and I had a great conversation together while at a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago just after the campaign ended. And he asked me what my plans were now that the campaign was over. And I basically told him, whatever God wants me to do, I'm going to listen to him and be obedient. And, you know, we got a lot of problems. And if he can place me in any particular position to use me to my abilities, whether I know what my abilities are or he knows what my abilities are, I just want to be used for that without any kind of personal or financial gain. And that's when, you know, Pastor Dave had reached out to me a few weeks later after our conversation there in Mar-a-Lago to say, what do you think about helping me with public relations to create advocacy for a place called Peace of Heaven Children's Paradise? And I asked him, well, what's that? It sounds amazing. What is it? He's like, well, there's a low security women's prison about 5 miles from our church that I've been, wanting to do something with, and speaking with the prison owners for like the last decade. Like he had at one time wanted to purchase it for homelessness in the community, or maybe a like drug rehab, some kind of a purpose, because the church for almost 40 years has always had a motto of find a need and meet it, find a hurt and heal it. And they literally found the needs in their community and wanted to do something about it. So, I'm sure you had him on your podcast recently, where he talked about a story of children going missing in the Oakland, San Francisco Bay, which led him to having the vision that God gave him of wanting to start the largest aftercare facility in America called Peace of Heaven, where we'll take this low security women's facility and retrofit it into a paradise, completely transforming it. It'll look nothing like it does now, and have a safe place for some of the children that can be rescued to be brought to for healing and education, nutrition, any medical needs. And we're still kind of figuring out all of the different types of triage that it will offer, because we're learning that some of the children, when found, have all these different issues with them. So we're going to make sure that the facility can maximize its potential. But we have a lot of research that we need to do, and we're networking with all the right people to be able to make sure that it can happen and legally work within our jurisdiction and our constitutional rights, and keep it compliant in California, because in our state, it's a very corrupt place. And we know that there are entities in California that do not want us to be successful, but we're praying for covering and we're praying for protection. So we're not afraid.
So you and your team, did you form a nonprofit to raise money and buy this property?
Yeah. So we initially operated under the nonprofit of the Church of Glad Tidings, and our pastor wanted to make sure that his vision God gave him was going to come to fruition, which we all kind of formed, a group together to put together a amazing event that just happened in June of this summer called Rev 17. It's short for Revelation 17 of the New Testament. But it was a fundraising event and an awareness event to teach the public about what we knew as far as the involvement of, high level politicians, celebrities, athletes, royalty, and this network that has been involved in the trafficking of children, but to also bring a spiritual aspect to show that there's prophecies in the Bible that talks about the system of the Babylonian system of Mystery Babylon, as the Bible calls it. And the culmination of that system is depicted by a woman upon a beast of 7 heads and 10 horns, I believe. And she's holding a golden chalice full of iniquity and, basically like the blood of her victims. And she's very braggadocious and very just convinced that nobody can ever destroy her system, which at that time, she was trafficking anything that you could traffic in the world to make money on. But it ends in the end of the verse in chapter 17, it talks about the trafficking of human souls. And so in the Bible, it talks about the end of that system if you read on into chapter 18. And to me and Pastor Dave, we believe wholeheartedly that God is intervening in this time of the history timeline, not only in our country, but in the world, to end that system. And we feel like we want to be a part of that prophecy. And so we were able to raise the money. God blessed us with we needed an extra $2 million. We needed a total of $4 million to purchase this property called the Leo Chesney Center. That was what it was called when it was operational. But we were blessed with that money. And then once we purchased the property, we're going to work through all of the legalities behind, zoning of the property and legal representation of our operation entirely. And then also we had started our process of forming the nonprofit and are now finalizing everything now that we know that we have the property secured. And so we'll be operating independently with our own nonprofit for Peace of Heaven.
Now, I got to ask, when you buy a defunct prison, who owns that? Is it the state? Is it the county?
So when the facility was operational, the prison policy in California was they were okay with privately owned and ran prisons in the state. And then I can't remember what year or what law was passed, but I believe Gavin Newsom, our governor, was involved in it, basically changing the state policy of no longer allowing for privately ran prisons, but they wanted to all be state ran. And so they had, basically it became, through bureaucracy illegal to run that facility. And, they weren't able to find any buyers for it. So they kind of just mothballed the place, but they had the vision of trying to, sell it to somebody that can refurbish it for something else. Because if you were to, see the facility, it kind of looks like a school. It doesn't really look like a prison. I mean, there's no cells in the facility. They're kind of like little sectioned off dormitories for people to sleep, and all the amenities you can ever think of, including gymnasium, library, classrooms, faculty, like administrative buildings. So it really kind of looks like a school, but there's a lot more security security infrastructure there to basically protect, outsiders from being able to get in and people from inside getting out. So it kind of has like the perfect shell of what we want to do with it to repurpose it. But like I said, I don't want the public thinking we're just, saving these children from slavery and from horrific conditions and bringing them into a prison. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is we're going to take that facility and we're going to completely transform it. I mean, everything from beautiful murals that people like, we've had tons of love pour through our website already of volunteers that want to help rehab it by painting beautiful murals and putting beautiful scripture on the wall, to donating, fountains and, planting rose gardens and, having a place for animals to be for like a petting zoo. There's all kinds of ideas that we're looking at, but we really want to make sure that the amenities of the facility tie into the healing aspect on a psychological and spiritual level for these children, because the trauma is unlike anything else that anybody can conceive in their human brain based on what they've gone through. So we really want to add a Christ-like spiritual component to this property, because we feel like these children have had tons of horrific things, so they need to literally from the root core of their essence, of their being, their spiritual being, to have that part healed, and to also provide them with love ongoing, and then have like some of the best nutrition for them, activities, schooling and education. So that way people, I mean, who learn about the place, they think, man, I wish every kid has access to that kind of a system. I mean, we really want it to be perceived as that. So that's our mission. That's what we're praying about. We're always going to continue to need to raise funds to accomplish this first facility. And I say first facility because we're dreaming big. We really feel that if we could create the model of Piece of Heaven to replicate into different regions of not just California, but across the country, that we can work and partner with other like-minded churches, church leaders, people within different states that have a similar vision that we do, and kind of create a really good model and template that can be replicated. So that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, I can imagine buying anything from the state of California or any state government is a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of forms, a lot of unreturned phone calls. So it takes a lot of, I don't know, fortitude to just power through that, I can imagine.
Yeah, it really is. It's navigating a chessboard, right? So, for people who've ever played chess, you really have to have some strategy and try to look, 3 to 5 moves out. And, but I really believe that, God gave Pastor Dave that vision for a reason, because he had already been building a lot of key vital relationships in the community leading up to this vision. For example, like he directly has relationships with the county sheriffs and the sheriff's department, which, per the Constitution, they have the ultimate jurisdiction of law in any county in any part of America. So that the sheriff is very important to honor and to work with, and to make sure that they are sworn to their oath of obeying the Constitution of the United States of America. And also, we have a great relationship with the mayor of the town of Live Oak, and she's been amazing to work with. We're also forming relationships with the county board, and so and just really, giving the different people of the community all the right information in order for them to support what we're doing and not resist what we're doing. And it just takes helping people wake up, because the mainstream is not reporting on these cases. I mean, I can't remember the last time I got an Amber Alert, broadcast to my phone showing that another child's gone missing, especially in a state of, over 40 million people in California. Mathematically, it's impossible that, that children aren't going missing every single day, if not missing already. And we still have all of those children that went missing over the southern border since the Biden administration that we still don't know their whereabouts. So there's always going to be a need to rescue and save and bring children to places where they can be rehabilitated and to be safe. And we hear that all the time from people who actually have the capabilities to conduct rescues. They say, Matt, it's not the rescue that we're concerned about. It's the place in which we take those children once we rescue them, because we don't want to put all these resources in the rescue just to have them back into the system, because we're learning that the Child Protective Services, the state, there's some bad entities working within those groups. I can't say that all those people are bad, but I will say that there's just enough people working in there that have some ties to that dark market and might be taking bribes or could have been compromised. So they're working against the welfare of these children, and we're aware of it. And that's why we need to come up with a solution.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, if a child is rescued, thankfully, okay, great, a child is rescued from trafficking or the awful life that they're forced into, then what? Where do they go? Who decides that? Who decides these things, and who pays for their travel to get from A to B?
Right. Statistically, what we're learning too is the percentage of the children that actually ended up in the trafficking trade a lot of times we're sold into it by family, by relatives, unfortunately, even by parents. And so we have to figure out not just a place for them to be brought to once rescued for rehabilitation, but a whole system to track the children, to know more about where they came from, and to investigate their home life, how they end up in the situation to begin with. Because we can't literally just turn them back over to their family in some cases, not all cases, but some cases. And so we're really trying to work. We're working with people right now that are connected with our current administration, who know the severity of the magnitude of the issue. So we're praying into all the right connections that we're making, as well as maybe the possibility for some funding to come our way. But we're really just trying to be grassroots about it at this time, and just be really use a lot of discernment with who we're partnering with and who we're willing to take donations from. But the sad reality is our system in America is broken, and it's been broken for a long time. And a lot of people are involved in the trafficking of the kids. So we just really need to come up with a new system in how we do things, from the rescue to the foster system. So
now you mentioned the Rev 17, and you explained how you came about that title, but what is that Rev 17 event for people who don't know?
Yeah, so Rev 17 was the very first event that we did, which was basically a awareness arm of Piece of Heaven. It is created to bring information to the public that they can then learn and be able to research more information to help them understand the severity of trafficking. And Rev 17 is created, and we're praying into doing a second Rev 17. Not sure about location yet, but basically it's a weekend long conference where we bring some of the best patriots and speakers, people who have operated in this realm of rescuing children and helping children to break them out of the slavery. So we had some amazing speakers that came for that 3-day event. People like Pastor Troy Brewer from Texas. Him and his organization have rescued something like 11,000 children from other nations out of slavery, and have helped them to find families to help them take care of them. We had Lee Dundas, Esquire. She's a human rights advocate and attorney. Lee Dundas has done amazing things in America of fighting against tyrannical mandates, from everything from the shots to the masks to closing down society, closing down schools. She'd really kind of built a name for herself with that fight, and now she's pivoting. She's always done things too overseas in places like Thailand to rescue girls and things like that from the trafficking trade. But now she's really kind of turning her sights on America, because she knows that we have to save our homeland as well. We also had Mary Flynn O'Neill, General Flynn's sister. She's been so supportive, and she's actually on the board along with Lee and Pastor Troy. They're all on the board of Piece of Heaven. And Mary is awesome. She's the executive director of America's Future, which is, I think, the oldest nonprofit operating in America today. They basically, for the last 80 years, have been doing things in America to preserve the Constitution, our Bill of Rights, everything from awareness to helping children, people of need, working with candidates in certain, political elections and things like that. So they're an amazing group of people, America's Future. We'll be seeing them actually pretty soon. They have an event, an anti-child trafficking event here in Oxnard, California, the weekend of August 22nd. It's on their website too for folks that want to go check that out. So amazing speakers. Lara Logan, world-renowned journalist. She had done so much as far as exposing what was going on in the Middle East, from the Iraq War, Afghanistan. She spent a lot of her career, behind enemy lines on 60 Minutes. And she knows exactly what's going on in the child trafficking realm. And so she came and spoke. Ilanka Deaton, South African artist, a singer, who was trafficked by her manager in South Africa, and just has an amazing, beautiful testimony that she was able to share. And all kinds of different people, survivors of the Epstein Island situation. We had Hope Beryl Green. She was trafficked through the Epstein network, and she was trafficked at like horse races in Kentucky as a child, and just amazing testimony. That woman's gone through so much. We had Kathy O'Brien. Kathy O'Brien was trafficked by former presidents, and she has a book out. I can't remember the title of her book, but Kathy O'Brien has a book. But she talks about MK Ultra and what they do to control the minds of their victims. And a lot of these children sometimes are born into the system, and like I was saying earlier, their parents are involved in it. And so, but yeah, Rev 17 was just something that really kind of shook a lot of people, but we were able to do it in a fashion, especially on Sunday, to where we kind of turned it more into an opportunity to talk about, what's the solution? Now that we know the darkness, where do we go to the light? How do we unify people under this situation? How can we work together to create, a place for children to go and for them to have a second chance at having a beautiful life ahead of them? Because we honestly believe that we can help these children find themselves again, to get healing, and they could be future leaders of America, and they would be some of the most awesome, like, talk about resilient, talk about like not taking opportunities for granted. Like, I can just see how humble that these, future adults will be if we can get them the right kind of love and attention they need from the time that we find them. So we really try to, with Rev 17, paint that opportunity for people. And that's what we plan on doing. We're really excited for the next one. I don't know who's going to be speaking, but I can tell you that based on who came to the first one, the second one's going to be awesome. So you definitely don't want to miss that one, Karl.
Yeah, I would love to. You were kind enough to invite me to it, and I had to work that weekend, but I would definitely love to make the next one so I can plan.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. Not only did we have speakers there, but we also had a whole room designated to media. So people like yourself that have a show, a podcast, a news outlet, we had them come and just provide all of the information and to their viewership, as well as interview all the speakers when they weren't actually up on stage. So it's a really great way to kind of cross-pollinate with a lot of the different media and the speakers and nonprofits that were there to help. And it's a great way to get Americans united and to work together through this information to figure out where do they fit in to this whole operation. Because everybody who's watching this, we need you in any capacity. If you have a love for this type of work and you want to help these children, I mean, we always will need donation, but more specifically, we need people to kind of join in the effort. If you have a background in, if you're a physician or education, a background in something that you feel could be vital towards the rehabilitation of these children, we're always going to be looking for qualified help.
Do you have children now, or people who represent them who are saying, "Hey, I got people ready to go when you guys open that place"?
Yeah, we're kind of on standby. We don't have children yet because we're about to go through a giant renovation process that could take, over a year probably to change this place, maybe a year and a half. But I mean, we want to start helping children right away. We've talked about maybe having some, sites that the public doesn't know about to kind of start to implement some of the protocols and do it on a smaller scale. Because once Piece of Heaven opens, I mean, it can house anywhere from 200 to 250 beds, children. And so we are looking at maybe starting a small prototype and trying it first with maybe a handful of children or a dozen children, and finding all of the right personnel and implementing some things that we've found in other areas of the country, people have had success with so far. But, it's never been done before, really, Karl. Like the size and magnitude of what we're trying to build and scale, never been done before. So we're really being careful, praying into it, trying to cover ourselves in the supernatural as well as the physical. But we have a lot of support pouring in, and thanks for, covering this interview, because it is going to take the awareness element to really wake up the country to help, get involved.
Mm-hmm. And it takes money, of course, but I would hope that the awareness would drive the money, because the kids who come there, they have no family, or they may have a family, but they're separated from them. It's not like they're going to pay a tuition. So you would, I think, would survive on donations.
Yeah, that's really what we're aiming for right now. And that's my job, is to start to put together some different campaigns for jumpstarting the donation and that aspect of Piece of Heaven. And so we did put together a $1 a day campaign, which I think is awesome, because I know people that spend, $5 at a Starbucks every day. And hold on one second, Carl, I got to plug in my computer real quick. So, anyways, but yeah, the $1 a day campaign is great, because any person who, wants to get involved to just help donate, if we had, if we could get 1 million people to donate $1 a day, that would be a beautiful thing. We can definitely transform not just one facility, but we can purchase multiple. And, how easy is it to go out to eat and spend $50, just going out to eat for 2 people. In this economy, like, money is, everything is expensive, but at $1 a day, we feel like that's a great way to kind of start the donations on a grassroots level. We've had a few other ideas too we're going to implement. One is it's called the Legacy Project, and it's going to be working with certain businesses to help get them involved, because there's some, obviously they can, use some of the tax help, but there's other businesses that we want to maybe work with that would help us get the word out and sponsor some of our events, and, maybe offer something to their customer base. So it's a matter of working with the public on awareness, because that's really where it starts, is getting people to understand the severity and the urgency behind what we're doing.
Oh, urgency. That's the word. Those of us who have jobs, we live our lives able to say and do what we want. And, the awareness of what the most vulnerable people are going through doesn't usually penetrate our minds or our consciousness.
Yeah.
Because a child doesn't opt to do trafficking.
No.
In my view, it's torture.
It is
absolute torture, and
it's evil. It's so sinister. It's so evil, Carl. Like, anybody with a heart, can see that this is a huge issue, that we can't just expect other people to deal with it and it just goes away on its own. This is, like I said, it's been around since the dawn of time, but it's morphed into this multi-billion-dollar industry worldwide, because it's not like the drug trade where, you have to smuggle the drugs, and then the drugs can only be used one time. They could get consumed one time, and then you got to go get more. The tragic part about trafficking of humans and children is they can be used multiple times in a day. And once from the trafficker's perspective, once they've been, basically abused to a certain limit to where physically they can't keep up with the clientele and their demand, as sad as this is they just discard these children. And we've had stories and reporting of children being used for other types of work slavery, organ harvesting. It's bad. It's so bad. So no one else is going to fix it except for we the people. And as God is my witness, he will intervene and help. And he's been calling for us to get involved and to put an end to this industry, put an end to this trade, because it's not going to go away unless we do something about it.
Now, let me ask you to put on your psychologist hat for a moment. Where does this demand come from? The consumers, I don't want to get into details, but the consumers of this product.
Yeah. Well, from information that I have, there's different levels of purchasing, people who purchase, right? There's, the low level folks that are unfortunately behind computer screens in their basements or at their homes. And these are people that are average everyday folks that you would see them in the grocery store and wouldn't think anything about it. But for some reason, they have some kind of an addiction. I can't say that all of them have their own trauma where maybe they were abused themselves, so now they want to go out and abuse. I don't have that kind of a psychological background, but I can say that the internet is enabling people to be able to access the dark web and certain websites, and they use code terminology in order to try to lure young people into potentially meeting with them. So it could also be through video games. It can be through social media sites. And so there are those people who try to do that, use the internet as a means of trying to abduct or to try to exploit a child. There's that level of people. Then there's other groups of people who traffic in children to meet the needs of a certain type of echelon of society where they're ultra rich. They have some kind of a sick, twisted perception of what they are attracted to. Unfortunately, in certain communities, they try to justify having an attraction for what they deem a minor. And, but, they just will try to make excuses for their behavior, and it creates a need for that. So in the black market, they justify selling children for a certain dollar amount, and they try to get away with it. And then there's the ultra elite. We have politicians and 3-letter agencies that are using children as a way to, compromise each other and to keep secrets amongst each other, and certain code of ethics in that secret society level type of organization. There's all different kinds of secret societies that have been around since way before America was even founded, but we have been compromised and infiltrated. In fact, a lot of the people that are digging on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and even, President Reagan being shot, but President Kennedy being assassinated, he found out what was going on in our country with some of these secret societies and the military industrial complex. And even back then, they were, using children as a way to blackmail certain people to do what they wanted to do. There's a place here in Northern California called the Bohemian Grove, which has been around since the mid to late 1800s. It's in the woods of the Sonoma Valley near Napa, north of San Francisco. And it's been known to be a place where children are trafficked because all of the elite people in the world, mainly men, it's an all men's retreat, but it's called the Bohemian Grove. And it's basically a place where they have private meetings and discuss operations that they're conducting in the world. And we're talking, royalty will show up here, former presidents show up there, CEOs of major Fortune 500 companies, certain people within the U.S. and foreign military have been there. And in fact, Alex Jones in the early 2000s was able to sneak in there with an old camcorder and record some of the what they had found there at the Bohemian Grove. And basically all these men would get together in their cloaks and their gowns, their black and red, hoods and their torches, and they do this ceremony called the cremation of care to a big owl statue, a concrete owl statue that's like 60 feet tall, a deity that represents Moloch. Which, if people understand secret societies, they pray to certain deities, and so you get these high profile men there doing these kinds of secret deals. A lot of them too, they just have these weird fetishes where they want to bring in young children. And it's been talked about for many, many years. There's been many documentaries written about it. The place still exists, which is mind-boggling to me, but all the mainstream sources kind of downplay the things that happen there and just talk about it being like a men's summer camp for the wealthy. And the security perimeters are farther apart on the acreage. I want to say the place is like 1,000 acres or something, but they've since like moved out the security points to minimize people being able to infiltrate the place. But anyhow, that's a little bit of the dark history of California. But going back to your question, this thing has many layers to the onion of reasons why there's a demand for trafficking of humans and children. But, like I said before, I mean, there's things that they will do to the children to scare them. And that's why some of the information people can find out about what was on the Hillary Clinton laptop, Anthony Weiner's laptop, all the information that they were trying to hide from the public. There's compromising information on those laptops. And I'll let your viewership kind of go down that rabbit hole of what could have been on there. But there's a lot of incriminating evidence, that our own political class have been involved in trafficking these kids. And that's where it's like, it's from the top down, folks. It's from people who are in politics all the way down to, like the local politicians, librarian, like it's bad. So we just have to like kind of, work together to kind of get through all of the evil side of what's going on, but then look for ways that we can really fix this problem, and not being afraid to talk about it with family or friends, that can maybe handle these kinds of topics, because it's no longer conspiracy theory. It's actually conspiracy fact. And I feel that the American public, especially under this administration, is going to learn more and more and more about that. In weeks and months to come. So,
well, I really support what you're doing, you and the group, to treat and provide help and assistance and a life for children who have been trafficked. I talked to a lady American, was trafficked by her own grandfather at the age of 4, and there were people in town, local people in the town, who were perpetrators. But she said that going to school was where she felt safe. So it's like you need a safe place. People throw that word around, but you need a sanctuary.
Yeah,
that sounds like what the Piece of Heaven place is.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. We're really excited for what is ahead of us. It's not going to be easy. We're going to run up against all kinds of brick walls, but God's going to help us figure out where to go and how to do it. And he knows our hearts, and we're really trying to make a difference. California is one of the worst trafficking, statistically, it's one of the worst in the whole country, but it's everywhere. It's in Texas. It's in New York. It's in Hawaii. I mean, there's no place in the country, or the world for that matter, that, is a safe place yet. So, but we have to start it somewhere. We're going to try to start it here in California. And I encourage your folks watching the show, if you want to check out our website, it's peace, like peace and love, peaceofheaven.life is where you can find out more information.
Right. I'll put that link in the description of this video.
Awesome, Karl. Awesome. Hey, man, it was great talking with you today. And I look forward to giving you some updates and jumping back on anytime.
Great. Sounds good, Matthew. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Karl. You stay blessed, and I'll be in touch with you.
All right. Sounds good. You take care.
All right. Take care.